configuration management, I'll probably say CMDB means the same thing. And so what you'll see inside of Footprint Service Core, again, that aspect is available, and it becomes your repository for all of your assets. So your assets could, yes, be your hardware, laptops, desktops, handheld devices, monitors, printers, contracts. It becomes the house for all of that. And why you want to house it there is because when those incidents come in or those requests for change come in, I can at this point now tag one of those CIs, configuration items, or assets to that record, that change record. So now what I will be able to see potentially if we need to do a change on that asset, what does the relationship look like? Who am I impacting when we change, let's say, this router? What devices are connected to it? What servers are connected to it? Is that our email server? So now I'm impacting email for this window. Those are the types of things that you'll start to see when you import all your CIs, configuration items, into the CMDB and associate those or link those to the change records. Okay, and so just making sure we've covered that slide. Let me go back into the demonstration. And let's switch gears to the CMDB. But before I do that, let's look at one thing on the change request. Let me just choose the one I think where I linked it so we can see quickly. I didn't. That's fine. We'll go ahead and link it from that CMDB. So here in the CMDB, so here's just another tab. I can get to it by doing the view. With that CMDB, you can have, kind of think about that workspace concept again. I can have multiple CMDBs. In this demonstration environment, I only have the one. Okay, so here if we look inside, I can see quickly, what is it, about 7 different items. And so what I've done is pick that network device. And so if we look at it, when I actually select it, here's what comes up, and then we have some actions that I can take on it. Now you'll see here on the left, so I've got details for that router. So this form, similar to the change form, but different because now what I'm doing on this form is my fields have to do with the data points that I want to capture for my network devices. So there I've got the name, the status, critical version, asset tag, life cycle, etc. If we contrast this to one of the other items in the CMDB, it may be different. So now what you're getting able to see is you can store different data points about the different items in the CMDB, because if I have a contract that I'm storing, those data points are going to be very different from, let's say, this router, because it's going to have, if it's a contract, start date, end date, what was the warranty price, etc. Here, I'm hitting the actions, and what I can do on a particular CI, here I'm just looking at this impact analysis. And what we'll see here, this is a kind of in a list view, and I'm only looking at one depth, i.e. one layer. You can kind of see under that direction type, I can see downstream and upstream. I'm going to take this depth out a little bit, so you'll notice there when I do 3, now I'm starting to see some downstream effects of this particular router, and what it's showing me are the work target information. When I go 4 levels deep, 5 levels deep, then I have as well some service levels that are introduced. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take this back to, let's go to the 3, and I'm going to switch from the list view and look at the visualization. So now, and this kind of looks like what we were looking at in the PowerPoint, but what I'm able to see, it just depends on what your flavor is. To see it from a GUI perspective or the list, it's still showing upstream, downstream. Here it's just showing me that a little bit easy, so I can see very quickly who's downstream from this router and then who's upstream from it. And then, of course, if I go into the depths there, in this view, it would show me those kind of at a more granular level. Okay, so the impact analysis is one thing that you're going to be able to see for each of your CIs or configuration items that lands inside of the CMDB. I'm going to head back to where we were entering the details for this particular asset. When I hit that IT information, I've got some data as well. I can see my financial information, and then if we had any links. And so what I can see here really quickly is I have an RFC, so 10043, that has linked to this particular asset. So that's why when we were looking at the impact analysis, I could see that upstream, downstream information as it pertained to any of my RFCs. Okay? All right, so here I'm going to head back and look at a couple of things from an administrative view as it pertains to the CMDB, because there's multiple ways that we can get those data points or those assets into Service Core. So here, let's go Administration. I'm going to back up to this Main tab, and under Systems Management, you'll see Import. And so here there's various tasks that you can do, but one of them is importing my configuration items. So I keep saying CI or asset, configuration items, that's bringing in the data. When I hit this, it's just basically 5 things that you have to fill out here on the left. So SQL, client management, so that's the sister product to BMC FootPrints. It used to be called FootPrints Asset Core. It's now called BMC Client Management, but it's the tool that goes out there and does that discovery. So if I've utilized that tool, I can very seamlessly bring that data in from client management. If you have a text file, CSV file, we can import from there as well. Okay? And on the configuration, again, a couple data points. Where am I dropping it into? So here again, I've only got one configured. If you had multiple CMDBs, maybe for your HR, and you wanted to drop data points into that HR CMDB, then you would just do the delineation here, map the fields, and then I'm scheduling it. So if I needed to put that on a weekly basis, monthly basis, I could do that. Okay, we head back to the scheduler. Relationships, again, something CI relationships, so configuration item relationships is something that I can import as well. Again, several of the tools perform that relationship mapping. I can do it from the Footprint CMDB as well, but again, if I have something that already has done it, then I can import that. Contacts, solutions is more into the knowledge base, tickets from other solutions, and then, of course, your user accounts, connecting to a directory data source to pull that data in. But again, under that Main tab is where you can start to import data into the CMDB. Okay? Back to my CMDB, there was one other thing that we wanted to look at here. Let me just close down the analysis and the network devices. Okay, so here if we wanted to, let's say we've imported a lot, but I've got a one-off that I want to enter data for. Here when I hit New, what this is showing me very quickly are the items that I can build or that I've already built the form for, and there's about 9 of them. So if I were going to say a new, let's say, network device. Now what's coming up is this information. Again, there's just a couple of those that are required. Remember, anything with the asterisk makes me put in data there before it saves it. So if you want to do it the manual way, you can do it that way as well. Okay, so again, multiple ways to get that data in. Of course, the easiest is going to be on the import. But if you need to do the one-offs, you can just walk through the new and then enter those data points accordingly. Okay, so here, if we head back, I'm going to go to one other aspect here. I'm under Administration, and we're going to go into the CMDB. And here's where I have my CI. So there were 9 of them. So again, what we could look at is pull one up. Again, this is the form for my CMDB as it pertains, let's say, to that network device. But here's where if you had, again, your contracts, and you could build up the form for the contract and then say which fields needed to be populated with respect to your contracts. So if we open up the network device, again, just like before, I've got the forms. So if we look at the agent web, I can see quickly, if you kind of recall back when we did that request for change, there may have been about 10 different hives here on the left for my assets or my CIs. I've only got the 4. And much like before, if we wanted to modify this data, take things away, I've still got my form controls over here on the left that I can simply drag and drop or create new ones to add to this particular form. Okay? All right. Dick, have any questions come in on the CMDB?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of questions. So let's get to the questions then. Is the CMDB is it Oracle or SQL, or is it something else? And does that matter?
Yeah, so the back end, so when I install FootPrints, it has some requirements. Of course, the database requirement is one of those. And so what my back end is for this is SQL. So Service Core 12 does require SQL. Subsequent versions may allow or open up other databases, but for right now, it's SQL.
Okay. And I think you may have answered this one to some extent, but it says here, how do you do the relationship mapping with Sccm? So in other words, if you have Sccm, you've got all this data, right? It comes in and it tells you what's out there everywhere. So you've got all these CIs. Right. I guess you've got PCs. You might have laptops. You might have different software versions that you're using. It comes in this big file, I would guess. How do you map what goes to what then? I mean, how does that work?
So under the administration for the import, so there I just went administration main, and we're doing this import, and I'm going to import those CIs. So if it's the SQL database, this map fields, now of course I haven't connected to a data source, i.e. the Sccm database or anything like that, but had I have done a mapping, then it would start being aware to me here where I could do the map. So in other words, in Sccm, maybe it says F name, and over here it's going to say first name. But yes, in this import is where you start to do your field mappings.
Okay. And would this be a manual process then? So does that mean that you'd have to map out who has what, or what CIs are related to what? Or how is it? Because how are they related if it's in Sccm? Is it already set up, or do you have to do it manually?
Yeah, so in this initial one, I would, of course, connect to the database, and it's going to see, like I mentioned, what their first name field is and kind of what we're calling it. You would map the two. Once I've done that mapping the one time for that Sccm database, and I don't have to do it anymore, I can put that on a schedule so it's hitting the Sccm repository once a week, once a month to pull in the data. But the initial mapping exercise, yes, you have to do that the one time.